The year is 1876. The air in the St. James's Gate boardroom is thick with the ghosts of industry and the silent verdict of inheritance. Edward Cecil Guinness, not yet a lord, not yet an earl, is 29. He sits alone at the head of a table long enough to host a state dinner. It is the throne room of a dynasty built on roasted barley and black water. His brother, Arthur, is gone, not dead. Pause excised. A quiet, bloodless coup executed not with a blade, but with a bank draft. Edward is now the sole owner. The weight of this decision settles on him not like a crown, but like a shroud. He inherited an empire, yes, but an empire is a beast. It demands feeding. It demands sacrifice. The ledgers on his desk are an inventory of sins and successes, each number a drop of sweat from 1,000 nameless men. His success will smell of fresh ink on stock certificates and the old, familiar fear of failure. He has secured the future of the company. He has secured his own gilded cage. The silence in the room is absolute. It is the sound of absolute power and profound loneliness. Power requires loyalty. Edward's loyalty was not to a man or even a city. It was to an idea, the Union, an unbreakable chain linking Ireland to the heart of the British Empire. As the cries for home rule grew louder in the Dublin streets, a different kind of transaction was taking place in the quiet of London clubs. The year is 1913. The air is electric with the threat of civil war. A paramilitary force, the Ulster Volunteer Force, is born to resist Irish independence by any means necessary. They need guns, they need uniforms, they need money. Lord Iveagh provides a substantial sum delivered without fanfare, a check written in a steady hand, funding an army against his own countrymen. This is the other side of the ledger. The philanthropy that builds houses for the poor in Dublin is balanced by the gold that buys rifles for the loyalists in Belfast. He built a legacy on black stout. Now that same legacy was being used to underwrite the potential for bloodshed. He was a man of contradictions. He refused to lock out his own workers during the Great Dublin Dispute, an act of singular decency. Yet his fortune was a weapon in a quiet, undeclared war. He was building a nation with one hand and arming its opposition with the other. A masterclass in controlling the narrative. He gave the people homes and in doing so made them tenants in his own story. The first Earl of Iveagh. Each title was another layer of gilded armor, sealing the Dublin brewer inside a fortress of British aristocracy. His marriage to a cousin was not romance. It was a merger, keeping the bloodline and the balance sheet pure. The dynasty was everything. He gifted parks to the public, funded institutes, and curated a legacy of untouchable benevolence. His name was etched onto buildings, his portrait hung in galleries. He had become a landmark. But the audit of a soul looks for what is missing. There are no records of personal crisis, no documented moments of weakness, no great, passionate follies. His life appears as a meticulously kept ledger, every entry balanced, every column accounted for. It is a biography of immense success and profound, deafening silence. He built an empire of black liquid in social housing, yet the man at its center remains a ghost, a specter haunting his own monuments. When he died in 1927, he left behind a fortune measured in the millions and a dynasty secured for generations. The final inventory of his life was flawless, a testament to public service and commercial genius. Pause, the most perfect and therefore most hollow of legacies. The year is 1913. Dublin is a city eating itself alive, the Great Lockout. A war declared not with guns, but with silence. The silence of idle trams, of cold factory furnaces, of hungry children. 400 employers, a united front of capital, locked their gates against 20,000 workers. A city brought to its knees. But one gate remains open, St. James's Gate. Edward Guinness, Lord Iveagh, refuses the call. He will not lock out his men. The press lauds it as an act of compassion, a moment of human decency in a storm of industrial brutality. This is a misreading of the man, a fatal miscalculation of his motives. This was not mercy, it was strategy. An empire cannot function on sentiment. It functions on continuity, on the uninterrupted flow of product and profit. While other industrialists fought a war of attrition, Iveagh was securing his supply lines. He was buying something far more valuable than a victory over the unions. He was buying loyalty, a loyalty forged not in the heat of camaraderie, but in the cold calculus of self-preservation. His workers would remember who fed their families when the rest of the city starved. They would become more than employees. They would become assets, immune to the siren song of revolution. Iveagh didn't save his workers from the lockout. He annexed them. He made the brewery a fortress and its people a willing garrison, forever indebted to the man who kept the fires burning while the world outside went cold. The final inventory. October 7th, 1927. The Earl of Iveagh is dead. The ticker tape does not stop. The brewery does not fall silent. The machine he perfected, the global engine of dark stout and gold, is designed to outlive its creator. This was his life's work. The anatomy of his success is a matter of public record. The world's largest brewery, a seat in the House of Lords, an earldom, a fortune so vast it could bend the will of cities. His philanthropy was just as monumental. The Guinness and Iveagh Trusts, brick-and-mortar solutions to human squalor. St. Stephen's Green, gifted to the public, a legacy written in stone, in stock portfolios, and in the very fabric of London and Dublin. But a post-mortem audit reveals a different kind of balance sheet, one where personal connection is the currency, and the accounts are empty. He married his third cousin, Adelaide, a suitable match, a union of assets. They produced 3 sons, the required heirs to perpetuate the dynasty. His life was a fortress of duty, its walls built with public service and commercial conquest. There are no records of grand passions, no documented weaknesses of the heart, only the relentless, grinding pursuit of permanence. He built homes for thousands, but his own was a museum of obligations. The final verdict is not found in his will, but in the silence that follows a great man's death. Edward Guinness did not merely build an empire, he became one. Cold, vast, and eternal. A monument of a man whose true epitaph is the quiet, ceaseless hum of his own machinery. Pause. The cost of immortality is a life. The record shows a friendship, a peculiar, almost theatrical cordiality between the Earl of Iveagh and W.T. Cosgrave, first president of the Executive Council of the Irish Free State. Photographs capture them in quiet conversation. 2 architects of Dublin's destiny. One built an empire of black liquid and gold. The other, a state from the ashes of a failed rebellion. The archives, however, do not record the sound of the silence between them. The vast, empty space where a kingdom used to be. This was not friendship. It was the final negotiation, conducted over glasses of stout when the war was already lost. Edward Guinness was a unionist carved from granite. His conviction was not a political preference. It was an article of faith, the bedrock upon which his world was built. The Union was order. It was civilization. It was the imperial framework that allowed a Dublin brewery to conquer the globe. He paid for this faith. He poured a fortune into the Irish Unionist Alliance, a river of gold intended to dam the tide of history. When rhetoric failed, the money allegedly flowed to more muscular enterprises. The Ulster Volunteer Force, a private army to defend a non-negotiable truth. For Iveagh, the map of the United Kingdom was sacred scripture, not a suggestion to be debated by poets and school teachers. His Ireland was a jewel in the crown, not a stone to be pried loose. But the tide does not negotiate with dams. It finds a way around, or it simply rises until the walls are submerged. The Easter Rising of 1916 was a tremor. The War of Independence was the earthquake. The city that housed his brewery, the source of his unimaginable wealth, became a battlefield for a future he refused to recognize. Every gunshot on a Dublin street was a mockery of his power. Every tricolor flag raised was a spit in the face of his allegiance. He had built hospitals and homes, gifted parks to the people. He believed in a paternalistic, benevolent union. And the people chose a different father, a harsher one. Enter William Thomas Cosgrave, a veteran of the 1916 Rising, a minister in the underground government, a man who signed the treaty that sundered the Union and gave birth to a nation Iveagh saw as a constitutional abomination. And now he was the head of that nation, the ghost at the banquet of the Anglo-Irish aristocracy. Their friendship, so often cited as proof of Iveagh's grace, was in fact the coldest transaction of his life. It was the post-mortem audit of his political soul. Imagine the scene. Farmley house, perhaps. The air thick with the scent of old leather and defeat. Cosgrave, the pragmatic revolutionary, needing stability, needing the largest employer in his fledgling state to remain, needing the Guinness name to signal to the world that the new Ireland was open for business. And Iveagh, the pragmatic industrialist, staring at the man who personified the death of his most cherished ideal. He had lost the war for the Union. He would not lose the brewery. The empire of belief was dead. The empire of commerce had to survive. So they talked about the economy, about housing, about the future of the brewery at St. James's Gate. They talked about everything except the one thing that truly mattered. They never spoke of the king. They never spoke of the crown. They never spoke of the Ulster Volunteers or the blood spilled to keep Ireland whole. Their conversations were a carefully constructed edifice built over a mass grave of political dreams. A treaty of silence. Every shared drink was a toast to a mutually beneficial hypocrisy. Cosgrave got his compliant industrial giant, and Iveagh got to keep his keys to the kingdom, even as its borders were redrawn around him. He remained a lord in a land that no longer recognized his master, a titan of industry in a country he did not want. This was not a story of reconciliation. It was the anatomy of a surrender. The quiet, dignified, and utterly complete capitulation of a man who had everything but the one thing he fought for, a country that no longer existed.